This is Nathalie, Lebrun.
And I'm Judy Rich. Together, we welcome you to LeadSpeak, school-based SLP podcast.
Whether you're an SLP currently navigating leadership waters, an SLP who is eager to shape the future of speech language pathology in schools, or a student who's preparing to join our profession, we welcome you all to this conversation.
Hi, Nathalie. Glad you're here today.
Hey, Judy. What's going on? How are you?
Really good and really excited to get this podcast started. In our first season, titled Your Journey to Leadership, we dive into the diverse and compelling stories of 5 remarkable SLP leaders from across the country. These stories are curated for aspiring leaders, current SLPs looking to lead informally, those eager to take on formal leadership roles, and even for SLPs currently serving in leadership capacities.
Yeah, Judy, we're finally doing this thing. We've been talking about this for a hot minute, and here we are. I think we're so excited. I think it's gonna be a great opportunity to really kind of explore and dive really deeply into how we can marry the passion that comes along with leadership and talking about the hard stuff too, right? Talking about the challenges that come along with leadership in our field, but just being a leader in general. These SLP leaders have all brought wonderful innovation and change to our profession. And I think they'll be able to share with us some really pivotal moments in their careers that have really created their leadership approach and their leadership mantras. I think this podcast is going to be great for anybody, whether, like what you said, if you're a new student in our field working towards graduation, for people who are new in their careers, mid-career professionals, or even folks who've had years and years of experience and have a lot to share from their journeys. So here we are, episode 1.
Episode 1, here we go. So because we're talking about leadership journeys, what we want to do is share our own leadership journeys with you all, and so that you can get to know us and just start thinking collectively about leadership and the joys and challenges of leadership. So let's start first, Nat, with you talking about describing your journey to leadership.
My journey to leadership has been an interesting one. I'm a big advocate for the idea that leadership really comes along when you have been preparing for it for a long time, and then you get an opportunity. And whether the opportunity is a formal leadership role with a big title and maybe your own office with a door, or maybe it's an informal leadership opportunity where you can really shape how things go for yourself and for your colleagues and for your students. One thing you might not know about me is I actually immigrated to the United States in 1994 from Canada. And when I immigrated with my family, I didn't speak any English because I'm from the French side of Canada. I'm French Canadian. And so that was 1994. Half of my day was spent in an ESL classroom, where I was trying to learn English with a teacher who did not speak any French. And, 2 years later, 1996, I ran for student council membership for my 5th grade class, and I got the role. And so I think that kind of speaks to an early kind of indicator that I had something to say, and I wanted to kind of serve others in that capacity, even if I was still trying to master the English language. When I think about my academic journey to leadership, I have to reflect back on the fact that I am a leveling communication sciences and disorder student. My bachelor's is not in ComD. I got my bachelor's from the UT in Austin, the University of Texas in Austin. And I worked in finance for a couple of years, and I realized that working in finance for me was just not a sustainable career. It didn't feel like an authentic career to me. And so I went back to UT, did my leveling program, and moved to Wichita, Kansas for Wichita State University, their graduate program. And there I just found a lot of opportunities to practice leading not only myself and kind of trying to influence the program and the opportunities I had, but also trying to influence the opportunities that others had in their graduate studies. Clinically speaking, my background has always been working with preteens, teens, and young adults in this kind of really cool transition stage of life. And the opportunities for leadership that came along the way have really shaped where I am today. When I think about that population of students, there's just not a whole lot of like go-to therapy materials and therapy approaches for this population. It's really something that I had to lean into other areas of speech and language and areas outside of speech and language in order to ameliorate myself and my services. So I did a lot of professional development from rehabilitation services, from nursing services, business, higher education to really help me be a better clinician for my student. And what ended up happening inadvertently is that then people started asking me to share my experiences and knowledge with others through a small group, kind of collaborative sessions to larger group professional development where I was leading professional development, to even speaking at the Texas Speech Language Hearing Association convention a couple of years ago on this exact topic. So just a lot of really great opportunities to like really develop some of my core competencies as a leader. And then the next stage of my career came along where my former boss, Robin Chapman, decided to retire. And the role of the head of the department for speech language hearing services at Humble ISD came up. And a really good friend of mine gave me a phone call and said, "Hey, Nat, you like to talk in front of people and you have a lot of declarative sentences whenever you talk. So why don't you go for the role?" And I honestly wasn't sure. I was really dubious because it just seemed like a really big job for people with a lot more years of experience than me. But when I went home that day, I took a piece of paper out and I wrote down my vision for speech at Humble ISD. And then I just started writing just all the things I wanted to improve and try to make a positive change for. And I filled up 2 pages. And I'm like, okay, I think I need to go for this thing. And I did. And I ended up serving in that role for 4.5 years. I served during a time where we faced really unexpected challenges, one of which was COVID-19, where I remember very distinctively mere weeks before we were all sent home for lockdown, we had a conversation where the conversation was like, wouldn't it be funny if we were trying to do this special education thing all online? Ha ha ha. Wouldn't that be funny? And then sure enough, the world changed and we had to do the thing. And I had to lead a team of 75 SLPs through those couple of months, through really those years. The other big challenge that came my way as a leader is we were facing more and more service delivery minutes for our students and less resources to make it happen, right? So as a coordinator, I really had to think through that, be very creative with that, and be very innovative to make the very best for my clinicians so that they could in turn take care of our students. And then last but certainly not least, in August of this past year, I decided that all those wonderful opportunities were leading me to a new stage in my career, and I decided to start my own business. So now I own LeadSpeak LLC, and we do really great work when it comes to working with students, providing therapeutic opportunities, but also working with school districts to make sure that they are doing the very best that they can in order to support their teams. So that's kind of like my leadership journey. Judy, what about you?
Well, Nathalie, I remember when I first met you, you came up to me after I was giving a presentation on some tools for making decisions about frequency, intensity, and service delivery for students in speech. And I had mentioned something in there about my goal was to take what I had developed for elementary students and morph it into something that would work for secondary students and students in the 18 plus programs. And you came up to me and were very excited and very articulate. And you do have a lot of words that you can say and a lot of declarative sentences when you speak. But from that time when you said, hey, let's get together and work on this together, which I think is a leadership trait, we've been going at it and it's been so much fun. My journey, like yours, is best described by situational leading or leadership, or leading in the moment, leading in the situation that presents itself. So I am very drawn to continuous improvement, to solving problems, especially people problems, and to making connections. And so those three magnets for me have drawn me into having opinions, expressing opinions, and wanting to solve problems, which then pushes an individual into a leadership role, or a role where you're kind of front and center. But when I think about my leadership journey, I think about the movie The Martian, where Matt Damon played Mark Watney, who is an astronaut biologist and gets stuck on Mars, and it's how he gets back to Earth. And at the very end of the movie, he's talking to a group of future astronauts in the astronaut training program. And he says, let's get this question out of the way. Did you think you were going to die? And so Mark Watney says, yes, absolutely. This is space. It does not cooperate. At some point, everything's going to go south on you, and you think this is it. Now, you can either accept that or you can go to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math. You solve one problem, then you solve the next one, and then you solve the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. Well, I'm sure you can make a lot of analogies, because this is the school business and schools do not cooperate. Eventually something goes south and you have problems to solve. And they could be very small problems. They could be huge financial problems. They could be very compelling issues about children, where you're in a situation where you can contribute and solve problems. And so that sort of describes my journey from being in graduate school and being NISLA president because I had an opinion and would say something. Everybody pushed me to do it. Probably nobody else wanted to do it. To into a lot of opportunities when I started my career in the Dallas Independent School District, because I was willing to learn and grow and take on new assignments. I got blessed with special assignments from my first boss, awesome boss, Betty Clark, and who at the time was running one of the best public school district SLP programs in the state, if not the country. I mean, it was solidly excellent. And I had the opportunity to be on an assessment team testing for child find and private school students. I had the opportunity then to morph that into being on the first autism assessment team, maybe in the state of Texas. This is decades ago, y'all, before autism was really even considered a disability condition. And that morphed into some leadership so that when Betty Clark retired, I continued on the autism assessment team, but was also given the opportunity to be the supervisor of the speech language program in Dallas. Big job, but a fun job. And that really shaped me in terms of doing both direct services with children in assessment, children and families, and managing an awesome program. That led to a director position in another school district where I was the director of special services. And it was very different than urban inner city Dallas. It was in Northeast Tarrant County outside of Fort Worth, and the demographics were very different, and the expectations in the community were very different. And so I learned a lot doing that about myself and about leadership and about what team members need from me when I'm in a leadership position. Then I moved on to becoming an executive director and was able to work with coordinating programs. And remember, I said a few minutes ago that I love making connections and solving problems. And so I was the executive director of special services, which is all the categorical programs, special education, where speech language pathology is housed, along with bilingual education, gifted, talented education, compensatory services, Title I services, library, media services, research evaluation testing, career technology education, all those special programs. And so we had a diverse, large team, and that also led to opportunity, but mostly growth, because we just kicked it in terms of solving problems for children and allocating resources in a coordinated way. And then I finished up my career in public schools as an assistant superintendent for student services, which then means that I got to go to a lot of football games for the halftime band show and a lot of theater and orchestra productions. So it's just been step by step by step, solving one problem, then the next problem, then the next problem. But trying to make things better along the way, solving problems, and then making connections for people and relying on the relationships in those leadership positions. So that's my journey. I will say that about 2 years ago or so, maybe 3 years ago now, I joined the University of Texas at Dallas and am a professor of practice, which means I supervise clinical practicum in elementary schools, and I also teach the child language courses. And I love that because all of my leadership experience allows me to be wise and give advice, but I am watching other leaders, younger leaders, just grow in very exciting ways as they take kind of the helm of that program and move everything forward for future professionals. So it's a very nice full circle feeling to be back in Speech Path and to be watching others grow as leaders.
So if I were to come into your classroom and be a student in your classroom, what type of leadership attitudes would you try to instill within me as a student, so as they enter the profession and bring in these gifts to our field?
Ooh, good question. We do a lot with being smart about being a speech language pathologist when it comes to language disorders and developmental language disorders. We talk a lot about inclusivity, neurodiversity, sensitivity and responsiveness to cultural linguistic diversity. That cultural diversity is big. So my leadership thing is more develop yourself as a clinician and as a professional and as a human who really wants to connect with other humans, because you can't separate language from culture. So I don't know if that's a direct link to leadership, but I certainly think it's a direct link to being a more responsive human.
Well, that sounds like a really interesting class, Judy, and I might just show up in one of your classes one day, because I think that'd be really good for me to also learn from you. So what other leadership attitudes do you bring to any role, whether it's a formal leadership opportunity or informal one?
Again, situational for me, but today when I'm thinking about leadership attitudes, other than that inclusivity and acceptance of diversity, I would say that it's really important to me to be purpose-driven, which means to, however you translate that into action as a leader, having your vision, your mission, actually working towards your purpose. What is your purpose in being the leader of the SLP group? Or what is your purpose in being the special education director? Or what is the purpose of being the leader of the students on your caseload. So wherever you are, what's your purpose? Another attitude, I think, is to listen. And that's a common one. And I would say that we need to listen to understand rather than listening to respond. So in my younger years, I was all very in my head and wanted to have the quick response. And the longer I stay on this earth, the more I value that quiet, responsive listening that can lead to understanding. So not the quick comeback. And then that leads into my third leader attitude for today, which is to respect the people on your team and to know that they have different perspectives, different work paces, different priorities. And that if we're purpose driven on the team, we'll get there and we'll do a good job getting there because of the diversity on the team. But I really believe that leaders need to model respect more than at any other time that in the school business that I've been around for so long. What about you, Nat? How about leadership attitudes that are important to you?
I think that the three that come to mind were really pointed out by other people. And I don't know if that's true for your experience as well, but sometimes the folks that I have worked with or worked for have been the greatest mirror of my approach to leadership. So the first one that comes to mind is being scrappy. One of my former bosses told me one day, after being new on this coordinator role for speech, she told me, you're a Johnny on the spot, aren't you? And at the time, I'm like, what does that mean? That's an odd thing to say to me. But I think over time, as I continued working with him, and I continued to evolve in this role, I've always been a really scrappy person where I'll make things happen, right? Like, you say this is your problem, or you say this is what's hard. Okay, let's try to figure it out. I don't spend a lot of time. I try not to spend a lot of time in this problem admiring phase where we're like, oh, this is such a big problem. It's always been a problem in the past. I'm a scrappy person. And I think as a leader, what I try to do is I try to be very positive and say, there is a way through. It's a matter of figuring it out and maybe taking a different road than what we've done before, which kind of leads me to the next attitude, which is being authentic. Again, a former colleague of mine pointed out to me, she was like, Nat, you're the same person here as you are whenever we go to Chewy's for happy hour, which is true. That's definitely something I strive for. And so the approach I want to take to leadership, whether I'm just taking care of myself and leading myself or taking care of my colleagues of my team, is always leaning into what we do for our students, which is using a strengths-based approach and kind of figuring out what is it that you are good at? What is it that really lights up your eyes and makes you really excited? And going from there and finding opportunities to really lean into that so that we can get the very best out of you rather than just pointing out oh, you're not so good in this area, so we should really focus on that. So being very authentic and really leaning into your strengths so that we can have just a really great team member and person to walk alongside is really, really important to me. And last and certainly not least, it's this idea of community. For me, I know I am never the smartest person in the room. And that is a very helpful thing to think about to help you continue to breathe when people are looking at you for the answer, right? And so knowing that you're a living community and that you have colleagues with different perspectives and experiences and opinions is a beautiful thing. And as a leader, it is my job. It is my responsibility to make sure that I remain hyper cognizant of that and that I make others cognizant of that. So again, we're really bringing out the very best in others in order to make a goal, change things up to make things better for our clinicians and our students.
Okay, so here's a question for you. for your authentic, scrappy self, what brought you joy, or what brings you joy in SLP leadership?
The thing I think about that brings me so much joy, and it's like a deep, like gut joy, is just thinking about the SLPs that I served and the team. And I think it's just having a chance to be working alongside some of the smartest, most heartfelt SLPs in Houston, in maybe Texas, in maybe the United States, and really cultivating a really fantastic dynamic team. That's what brings me joy, is just to find what people are excellent at and discovering like what their hopes are for themselves as professionals, but also their hopes for their students and for their campuses, and really like honing in on that and bringing opportunities to them that they may not have considered before towards achieving those goals. And so that's what I love doing. I loved my favorite day every month was our all SLP meeting. It was a very stressful meeting. Don't get me wrong. It took a lot of time to prepare for it. And then when we were actually doing the meeting, I never quite knew what topics would get the team fired up that month, but that was what I love the most. And that's what brought me so much joy, is because when my team got fired up on a topic, I knew they were connected and I knew they were invested. And so I knew that's where the magic sauce was, in making sure that we were doing the very best that we could for our students. Right. So that's what brings me very deep joy. How about you, Judy?
Well, remember I said that I love problem solving, and the first thing that comes to mind that is joy giving has been when I've been able to problem solve on student issues, whether that's an individual case to come up with a schedule that's better, or staffing that's better, or placements that is going to be more conducive to improvement for a student, or to help a family understand things in a new way about their family member with disabilities. All of those types of problem solving, from the individual level up to when I was in a different role and didn't have so much direct student contact, allocating resources, coordinating resources to do cool things for students, especially students with communication disorders, because that's, what I live and breathe as an SLP. But any student that had needs or struggle, and coming up with systems of improvement so that things got better in the lives of the students that were in the school district that I was working with. One of the coolest things that I was involved with near the end of my career is allocating resources and combining resources to send a book home, or maybe it was 2 books home. No, it was a book home in either English or Spanish, whatever the student needed, for all students pre-kindergarten through 8th grade. And we would have an Irving Reads day in the spring. And it started out 10 at 10, where everybody in the city, we hoped, would stop and read for 10 minutes at 10 o'clock on a certain day, usually like May 10th or April 10th. Usually May 10th, because then the state assessment was completed and everybody could breathe. But our goal was, from year to year to year, to eventually send 1 million books home, to spread 1 million books throughout the community that would be in at homes and in the hands of children. So that's very cool, but that takes coordination of resources and a vision and moving forward, and a little bit of tenacity to do the marketing and pushing for that. So that was a fun thing, but that's on a broad scale brought me joy. Also, I love to read and I love books, but really solving problems for students is where I've got to hang on that particular question in terms of joy.
So Judy, we've been talking for a little bit now, and I'm really looking forward to kind of using this podcast format to make things really accessible for SLPs and for students as far as like training for leadership and just hearing about different approaches and things for them to consider and just mindsets around leadership. I would love for you to share kind of like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you spending an hour of your week every week recording this thing for others to listen to?
I think what I'm most excited about in terms of the potential of this podcast is hearing some very, very interesting, powerful, compelling stories. I'm looking forward to the stories about leadership that we're going to hear from our guests. And along the way, as they tell their stories, some ideas that will make things better, or ideas that will turn a corner or create momentum for problem solving for other SLPs in whatever their leadership situation is. So I'm all about stories. You can tell from me talking about Mark Watney and Space Does Not Cooperate I just want to hear stories, and I want to engage in the dialogue. And you know me, I always have an opinion. So being able to reflect with you, either on the podcast or off the podcast, about what the stories that we've heard, I just think it's going to be life-changing.
Very, very cool. For me, when I think about the months and the year that we spent away from our colleagues in various degrees during the COVID time, what was really helpful for me, not only professionally, but personally, was listening to Brene Brown's Dare to Lead podcast series. It really gave me a chance to come above water, where under the water was all the things we're trying to solve for, from issuing IEP amendments to making sure people have devices to consents for Zoom therapy, all those things, and coming above water, and just for me to refill my mind with just different ways of thinking about problems and really thinking about how to continue the culture of my team when we were all virtual. So I'm hoping to draw inspiration from that podcast series into this podcast to give our audience an opportunity to come above their huge stack of to-do things and really kind of refill their hearts and their minds, and just to give them different perspectives on different issues. And maybe it will be a thing where they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about it that way before. Oh, maybe I should try this. There's not a whole lot of leadership training whenever you get an opportunity to lead in a formal way. I remember when I got the SLP coordinator position, my first day on the job, I was being walked to my new office with a door. It was very fancy. And I took a beat at the door and I looked at the chair. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, to sit in that chair and take on that role. And I think it would have been really, really helpful for me then and now, in fact, to have access to this kind of platform and community so that I could serve my team better from day one, and then in turn better serve the students in our district. But yeah, so to take inspiration from Brene, because everybody loves Brene, there are 4 questions that we will ask all her guests whenever they're done with their interview. And so I feel like we have to put ourselves through the ringer as well to make things, equitable. So here's your first question, Judy. What are your 3 forever favorite songs?
Well, again, today, I would have 3 favorite songs forever. And then next week, they might be different. But all of my forever favorite songs are going to be gospel. It's what I grew up with. It's what my go-to for happy. It's my go-to for sad. It's my go-to for inspiration. So just give me gospel And I really like Alan Jackson's gospel music a lot. So how about you?
So I have a Spotify playlist that Spotify tells me which songs I've listened to the most ever in my membership. So the ones that are coming up right now are Fix You by Coldplay, Feeling Good by Michael Bublé, because he's a fellow Canadian, and I dare you not to dance to that song. And then the other one is a song called Everyday by the rapper Logic and Marshmello. So what's on your nightstand right now, Judy?
Right now, let me look because I'm looking at it. 2 journals for me to write in, and 4 books and a Kleenex, box of Kleenex. How about you?
Gotta have that box of Kleenex. I have my humidifier because this quote unquote Texas winter is really hard on my sinuses. And I also have a baby monitor because I have an almost 3-year-old that still likes to communicate to us late at night about what he needs.
Okay, who brings you joy?
Well, now that my brain is thinking about my son, I have a almost 3-year-old son. His name is Olivier. He is a simultaneous English-French language learner, and he brings me so much joy because I know at the end of the day, if I had a really hard day, I know I can look at him and he's probably gonna say something or do something that just like melts my heart and makes everything just float away. So how about you, Judy?
Same in terms of family and friends. You know, one of my gifts from the pandemic is much more intentionality about reaching out and being in touch on a cyclical basis with friends and groups of friends. And I've just really, really enjoyed that that habit of being intentional with friendships. Nothing beats a good friend.
Okay, here's the hardest question, Judy. Okay, what is leadership to you in one word? That's hard to do as an SLP, but like one word for leadership.
You didn't warn me about this, so let me think for a minute. Engagement.
I like it. For me, it's community. All right, so I think we did the thing, Judy. We recorded our first episode.
This was fun, Nat. I so enjoyed our conversation and look forward to upcoming podcast episodes to hear from our guests about their leadership journeys.
Next time on LeadSpeak, we will have Charlotte Green, Executive Director of Special Education at Cherokee County Public Schools in Georgia, joining us to share with us her leadership journey to her current role and all the amazing work that she has done for speech language pathologists in our country. We look forward to seeing you very soon again. Until then, take care.